Good afternoon, our wonderful Hawk families. This is Mrs. Hilliard, proud principal of Urbana Elementary, and I just wanted to share with you again FCPS and UES are still celebrating Black/African American History Month. And as I shared a book last week about a wonderful African American ballerina, I do have one about Katherine Johnson. About a few years ago, a movie was made about called Hidden Figures, which featured three Black/African American women who were an integral part of getting our first man to the moon. And now they have a book out called A Computer Called Catherine. She was one of the mathematicians that worked on the flight path to get our astronaut to the moon and back safely. So I wanted to share this book with you, and I hope you would find it interesting and certainly do more research on Katherine Johnson and also to read this book about her as well and share it with your family. So, again, A Computer Called Catherine. It is written by Suzanne Slade and illustrated by Veronica Miller Jameson. Everywhere she went, Catherine counted. She counted her steps to church. She counted the plates on the dinner table. She even tried counting the stars in the sky. Most important of all, Catherine counted the days until she could start school. Finally, at the age of 5, she followed her brother hundreds of steps to the two-room schoolhouse. An excellent student, Catherine devoured thick books and added numbers at the speed of light, so the teacher decided she would skip first grade and start in second. But Catherine was such a fast learner, she later skipped fifth grade too. And before you could say mathematician magician, she was a grade ahead of her older brother. Catherine loved math because it was easy to see if an answer was right or wrong. Meanwhile, most everyone in town was arguing about right and wrong. Some people said it was wrong for children with different skin colors to attend the same school. Others said it was right for women to work at the same job as men. It wasn't right for women to work at the same job as men. Their arguments seemed wrong to Catherine, as wrong as 5 plus 5 equals 12. She believed everyone should be treated the same, so she kept working hard in school and dreamed of a future when all people have equal rights. Catherine finished eighth grade when she was only 10 years old, but her town did not have a high school for Black students. Determined to keep learning, she counted the dusty miles, 120 in all, as her family moved closer to a school that she could attend. Then she took an exciting math class called geometry. She learned how points and lines made shapes, triangles, trapezoids, and perfect parallelograms, and her love for math grew exponentially. At 15, Catherine started college. She flew through every math class at West Virginia State, so a professor taught her harder classes just for her. In advanced geometry, she plotted points on a graph. When she connected the points, they created a beautiful U shaped curve called a parabola. It was love at first sight. After graduation, Catherine became a math teacher. Back then, people said women could only be teachers or nurses. Catherine knew that was wrong as 10 minus 5 equals 3. She believed women could be anything scientists, lawyers, or mathematicians. She set out to prove it. Catherine discovered a research center in Virginia that was hiring women mathematicians. They were called computers because they made calculations that helped the men engineers design airplanes and flight plans. To Catherine, it added up to the perfect job. All day long, she pushed buttons on a calculator just like the other women. She solved long math equations just like the other women. She wrote answers on a huge data sheet just like the other women. But Catherine wasn't like the other women. She asked questions, lots of questions. Why were their calculations being used? Why are they important? How did her answers help develop airplanes and flights? The men engineers noticed a woman who asked intelligent questions and how quickly she solved difficult math problems. So they asked Catherine to join their space team. Its mission, send the America's first astronaut into space. Catherine said yes. Then she discovered that women weren't allowed to attend the group's meeting. She knew this was wrong, as wrong as 5 times 5 equals 20. She asked if she could go. Women don't ever go to those, the engineers replied. Is there a law against it? Catherine said. And they said no. So Catherine showed up at the next meeting ready to work. Astounded by her geometry skills, the team asked her to calculate when America's first space flight should blast off. Catherine agreed, but first she asked questions like, where should the rocket splash down? How high should it fly? When should it land? With that information, Catherine carefully computed the rocket's first flight path, a beautiful U shaped curve. Next, she worked backwards to figure out the time it should blast off. Then she began counting the days until launch. On May 5th, 1961, Alan Shepard blasted off. Following Catherine's flight path, he soared into the silvery sky. 15 minutes later, he splashed down in the Atlantic Ocean, right on schedule and right on target. Soon, Americans began dreaming of a longer flight around the entire Earth. To figure out the math for this long, complicated trip, engineers decided to use their new room sized computer that worked much faster than people. But astronaut John Glenn trusted Catherine more than the machine. He wouldn't step 1 foot onto the rocket until she said the computer's calculations were correct. Happy to help, Catherine checked every number. On February 20th, 1962, John Glenn became the first astronaut or the first American to orbit Earth. Then people began wondering if an astronaut could travel all the way to the moon. Both the Soviet Union and the United States wanted to be the first to land there and win the space race. Catherine knew this flight was incredibly long and dangerous. Every calculation would have to be perfect. One math mistake, and the rocket would zoom right past the moon. As NASA's computer hummed and compiled a flight path to the moon and back, Catherine went to work too, double checking the machine's calculations. But this was the most complicated geometry problem she had ever seen. One of the points, the spacecraft was flying incredibly fast. Her target, the moon, was consistently circling the Earth while spinning. Some people thought the problem was too difficult to solve, but Catherine knew that was wrong as 25 plus 5 equals 4. She calculated and computed. She plotted and planned. She created a bold, brave path all the way to the moon and back. 10, 9, ignition sequence starts. Hearts are racing. Catherine leaned close to the small television screen. 7, 6, 5. She held her breath as powerful flames exploded on the launch pad. 4, 3, 2, 1. Lift off. The rumbling rocket slowly rose above the ground, above the smoke, above the clouds, and then disappeared in the black space. 4 days later, Neil Armstrong took his first steps on the moon. Catherine smiled and began to count. And then here it showed her drawings of what she's done. That's a picture of Katherine Johnson. Here is one of her technical notes, and you can see the Apollo mission. There are other dates in the book as well, the timeline to let you know what she did to get Neil Armstrong to the moon for him to be the first man to step on the moon. Please take some time to read about those influential African Americans that have made an impact in our nation, but not really necessarily recognized as these three women were in Hidden Figures. But here is a book about Katherine Johnson. I hope you take some time to read that book and learn more about impactful African Americans that have made America a great place to be.